On August 5, 1997, around 1 p.m., the body of Gloria Covington was found near a YMCA building in North Amarillo, Texas. It is reported that she was found by children in the neighborhood. Coincidentally, one of the children who found Gloria that day disappeared a year later, and whose case has yet to be solved as well. The details about this case are limited, and the questions behind what happened the day she was murdered remains unanswered. Gloria would have turned 73 years old this year, and marks this the 28th anniversary of her death. This is the untold story of Gloria Covington. This video is for entertainment and educational purposes only. This video contains graphic and disturbing material, including sexual abuse, extreme violence, and other traumatic subject matter. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. If you are sensitive to such topics or have experienced trauma, please take care before proceeding. Gloria Covington was born on February 4, 1952, in Amarillo, Texas. She was a mother, facing hardships at the time of her brutal, sadistic murder. Before we find out what happened leading up to Gloria's death, let's look at her natal birth chart to learn more about what kind of woman she was. Though we don't have the time of birth, we can still see by this chart just who Gloria was as a person. Let's start with Jupiter in Aries and the Sun. This means she was expansive and assertive, with impulsive optimism. She likely learned and grew through courageous leaps in life. She was bold, independent, and likely sought purpose through action and leadership. She may have been overly confident or impatient when pursuing her goals. Jupiter here brings luck through daring moves and bold truth-telling, especially in leadership roles. Algo in Taurus and Saturn is an extremely dangerous placement. It's highly karmic and intense, and is associated with extreme experiences, especially in matters of physical safety, beauty, or voice. It suggests trauma, especially involving control, possession, or violations of the body. Gloria likely possessed hypnotic, dangerous beauty, or experienced cycles of being both the victim and reclaiming her power. The moon in Gemini and Mercury suggests Gloria was emotionally expansive, curious, and scattered at times. She likely felt secure through communication, information, and mental stimulation. It's possible she compartmentalized her emotions or even avoided emotional depth at times by intellectualizing her feelings. It can also indicate that her mother or childhood emphasized talking but lacked depth or emotional attunement. Uranus retrograde in Cancer and Pluto suggests emotional instability or trauma in the childhood home. There may have been sudden changes or detachment from her mother, family, or roots. Gloria likely exhibited rebellion against traditional family roles and often felt like the black sheep of the family. Lilith in Cancer and Neptune tell us her dark feminine energy was rooted in emotion, the womb, and motherhood. She may have struggled with controlling or even being controlled by maternal figures herself. There is deep sexual and emotional power here, often hidden or rejected early in life. This placement also suggests themes of abandonment, fertility, and fierce protection. Pluto in Leo and Mars suggests intense willpower, magnetic charisma, and deep inner strength. She may have experienced power struggles in love or creative expression. This placement tells us Gloria had a larger-than-life energy and likely sought control or transformation through performance, parenting, or leadership. Looking at Saturn in Libra and Uranus, this represents deep karmic lessons in relationships and fairness. This suggests Gloria may have had challenges with commitment, justice, or balance in close relationships. She may have feared rejection or abandonment unless she was perceived as perfect or balanced. This placement could also indicate early relationship disappointments or burdens. Neptune retrograde is in Libra and Mercury, which means there are illusions, confusion, or spiritual ideals around love and justice. She may have been prone to codependency, fantasy in love, or saving and/or fixing others. It also indicates that Gloria had potential for great artistry and compassion in love. Mars is in Scorpio and Pluto, which tells us that Gloria had an extremely powerful emotional drive. She was strategic, penetrating, and passionate. She was likely highly sexual, intense, and mysterious. This also means she likely attracted or confronted shadow energies in others. There is strong survivor energy here, which suggests she may have experienced betrayal or danger. However, Gloria likely rarely exposed her battles at surface level, but rather fought it psychologically and emotionally. Lie in Sagittarius and the Sun tells us it's possible she had false self or illusions tied to freedom, truth, or education. She may have misrepresented her beliefs, faith, or desire to explore. At 29 degrees, this theme is karmically potent, possibly dealing with betrayal or projection involving truth or spiritual teachings. Chiron in Capricorn and Saturn tells us she has a deep wound around her self-worth, either through status, work, or discipline. She may have felt like she was never good enough or overcompensated through achievement. Gloria's healing path was through accepting limits and releasing shame around productivity or traditional roles. Venus is in Capricorn and Saturn too, which means for Gloria, love is serious, loyal, and bound by duty or time. She likely preferred long-term, slow-developing relationships with structure. She may have been reserved emotionally, with fear of vulnerability, and deeply committed. Mercury is in Aquarius and Uranus, which tells us Gloria was brilliant, with a unique mind, who thought ahead of her time. She likely communicated in an original, rebellious, or detached way. She had high intellect with a humanitarian slant, and likely wanted to help the collective evolve. She may have alienated others sometimes by being too abstract or emotionally distant. The Sun in Aquarius and Mercury means Gloria's identity was tied to uniqueness, rebellion, intellect, and freedom. She was highly independent and likely drawn to unconventional paths. She was different from others and likely felt proud of it. It also indicates Gloria had a strong calling to be part of change or revolution in thought. True node in Pisces and Neptune means Gloria's soul path involves surrender, compassion, and spiritual unity. She was meant to evolve from hyper-rational thinking into faith, flow, and intuition. Her early life may have been logical or rigid, leading evolution to come through art, empathy, or mysticism. Gloria likely felt called to serve and/or heal others. Lastly, DNA is in Pisces and the Moon, which tells us she was someone profoundly connected to her ancestry, emotionally intuitive, and spiritually porous. This placement makes her deeply compassionate and sensitive, but also at risk of trusting too easily and absorbing the energies of those around her. In summary, Gloria was a beautiful, complex woman with a powerful soul. She was intellectually sharp, with deeply hidden emotional power. From a young age, she developed a strong intellect and survival instinct to protect herself from emotional wounds and betrayal. On the surface, she most likely came off as witty, detached, and independent, but beneath that lay a labyrinth of intensity, vulnerability, and karmic wounds. She felt deeply and craved meaningful, lasting connections, but likely found herself in karmic or difficult relationships that tested her faith. Gloria carried lifetimes of power struggles, betrayal, and resilience, especially in love, family, and self-worth. Though she may have felt different or misunderstood early on, her path is one of transformation and spiritual elevation. Gloria was destined to rise from her pain as a wise, resilient guide who turned personal trials into strength, healing, and purpose. She was truly a unique, special person. Now that we know what kind of soul Gloria was, let's look at her death event chart. This will tell us more about what happened to her that day, who the perpetrator is, and what the karmic purpose is behind her murder. This chart paints a deeply symbolic, disturbing picture. So let's start with the ascendant, or AC. This always represents the victim, or a starting point and scene. The AC is in Libra and Mercury, which tells us the scene that was presented to the world may have initially appeared peaceful or composed, but turned out to be deceptive. Chiron in the first house near the AC tells us that the discovery of Gloria's death carried a sense of profound wounding, not just to her body, but to what she symbolized. This was not just a loss, but a violation of the sacred feminine. Libra rising is the illusion of balance, but it's performative. The crime scene likely appeared neat, posed, or disguised in some way. This placement also represents visible wounding, with injuries that affect appearance, balance, or the face. Mars in the 12th house, hidden just behind the AC, shows secret violence, concealed rage, or male aggressor energy operating from behind the scenes. This person likely pretended to be peaceful and charming. The second house represents possessions, body condition, or what was held or removed, and values. Lie is in Scorpio and Sagittarius, which means the body or scene was tampered with, or there was a false narrative attached to how she died. This could involve blame shifting, planting evidence, or a deceptive story to explain her death. Pluto retrograde in Sagittarius indicates deep trauma, a brutal or controlling death, and possible internal damage, bleeding, or secrecy around cause. Retrograde here also speaks to a cover-up of motive. The person responsible for Gloria's death likely has a distorted philosophy, such as a warped sense of justice or punishment. Looking at the third house, it represents communication, environment, clues, and how she was last seen or spoken to. Neptune retrograde in Capricorn suggests confusion, deception, or misdirection through messages or surroundings. It could relate to phone calls, surveillance, or rumors. It also suggests someone falsified or manipulated information, perhaps even someone in authority or posing as responsible. It's possible the perpetrator may have used misleading messages or fabricated conversations to keep tabs on her. The fourth house represents the home, scene of death, root cause, family ties, or hidden emotions. Uranus retrograde is in Aquarius, meaning Gloria's death was sudden, shocking, and likely happened in a space that was familiar but emotionally detached. Her death could have happened in a house, secured area, or a vehicle controlled by the perp. Jupiter retrograde in Aquarius tells us a figure tied to home, philosophy, religion, or moral superiority, someone who should have protected her but failed or inverted that role. The fifth house represents romance, pleasure, creativity, children, and risks. Pisces ruling the fifth house suggests the possibility of romantic betrayal, loss of control, or manipulation using dreams, seduction, or promises. The perpetrator likely used charm or emotional fantasy to disarm her. The sixth house represents the physical condition of the body, injuries, timing, or method. Looking at Saturn retrograde, it tells us the body was restricted, bruised, possibly suffocated, or showed signs of pressure or restraint to the head, face, or neck. Aries rules the head. Retrograde implies slow deterioration or violence that left long-term physical signs, involving blunt force, binding, or discipline and punishment themes. This placement also tells us the wounds were penetrating, likely causing harm to bones, internal bleeding, and blunt force aftermath. The seventh house, or DC, represents the perpetrator, direct opposition, or face-to-face contact. Though it's empty, it's still represented by Aries, which is ruled by Mars. Mars is located in the 12th house, which is the hidden enemy. This confirms Gloria's killer was someone she knew or was close to, and whose true intentions were hidden beneath the surface. Mars in Libra shows manipulation disguised as charm, passive-aggressive motives, or false partnership. The perpetrator likely presented themselves as a friend, lover, or trusted person, but harbored deep hidden rage, control issues, and resentment towards Gloria. This placement also suggests tools and weapons were used closely and precisely. With Mars in the 12th house, it's likely the perpetrator had a hidden weapon and used it in a surprise moment. The 8th house represents death, cause, transformation, and legacy. Algo in Taurus is one of the most violent stars, which is tied to beheading, suffocation, facial trauma, and rage-filled murder. This tells us Gloria experienced violent trauma to the head, face, neck, or throat, likely caused by repeated impact. DNA placement here indicates genetic material left behind, like semen, blood, or hair. There is likely forensic evidence that connects her to the perpetrator biologically. It also indicates that Gloria's death was karmically destined or ancestral in nature. Taurus is ruled by Venus, which is in Virgo, conjunct Lilith and True Node. This suggests the perpetrator exhibited signs of jealousy, repressed desire, or a Madonna whore complex. Looking at the 9th house now, it represents legal systems, beliefs, travel, education, and spiritual philosophy. Gemini here suggests this death sparked questions, media attention, and legal ambiguity. It also indicates conflicting information or dual narrative. Someone is lying or withholding truth. It's likely Gloria's case involves legal confusion, media manipulation, or a split narrative. It also suggests the perpetrator is still pretending to be innocent. The 10th house represents public perception, exposure, and destiny. The sun is in Leo, meaning this moment was fated to be exposed and is possibly tied to ego, pride, or power imbalance. It suggests Gloria's death affected others' reputations, brought spotlight to buried issues, and had collective importance. It's likely her death shattered illusions and began a public reckoning. The 11th house represents community, forensic detail, the soul's aftermath, and/or spiritual message. This is a heavy stellium in Virgo. The moon is the emotional reside, pain, mourning, and analysis. Mercury here indicates there is crucial clues involving either texts, writing, or some form of digital communication. Venus and Lilith in Virgo tells us the sacred feminine was distorted, likely through sexual rejection, jealousy, or betrayal by a friend or lover. True Node here means Gloria's death holds an important karmic message around truth, justice, and voice for the silenced. Her story will likely become a catalyst for justice and collective healing. Lastly, we have the 12th house, which represents what's hidden, unconscious, spiritual closure, or enemies. Mars here indicates the perpetrator hid their true intentions and acted out of suppressed rage, envy, or power hunger. This placement also shows us secret violence committed in a moment of repressed emotion by someone who played the role of an ally. The perpetrator is likely hiding in plain sight and may even pretend to mourn publicly or insert themselves into the case narrative. There is evidence to suggest Gloria's perpetrator was likely stalking her, either in person or through manipulative messaging. He may have been monitoring her behavior, location, or social presence for some time prior, causing feelings of jealousy, insecurity, or provocation. Gloria's death was not an accident, nor random. It was an intensely personal, violent, and karmically significant event. She was murdered by someone she knew and had once trusted, who appeared polite, kind, and maybe even caring on the surface. But beneath the facade is a weak, fractured male, one wounded by rejection, controlled by ego, and quietly unraveling in the presence of a woman he couldn't possess or silence. Gloria likely agreed to meet him, either out of politeness, concern, or hope of closure. He framed the interaction as peaceful, offering a ride, requesting a conversation, or asking for understanding. But inside, his intentions were already warped. He had been watching her for a while and saw her independence not as strength, but as defiance. When she drew a boundary, rejected his control, or even simply reminded him that she had a voice of her own, her murderer unraveled. His anger surfaced, not as an outburst, but as chilling calculation. Gloria's refusal to submit to him wounded the part of him that had long relied on control to feel powerful. Her assertion was intolerable to her killer. Gloria's attack was sudden and shocking, yet the method carried a slow, suffocating, punishing tone, involving brutal, repetitive, and fatal injuries to her neck, face, and head. She was physically beaten before she was attacked with a sharp weapon meant to target the very parts of her body that spoke, breathed, and lived. This was not just an act of violence, it was an act of erasure. Though Gloria was shocked and disoriented, she fought as hard as she could until she was able to get away briefly. Her body carried her as far as it could, propelled by instinct and will, but ultimately gave out. Death for Gloria didn't come instantly. She experienced prolonged suffering. This chart tells us that her clothes were either torn or removed from struggle, or removed by her killer shortly after. This was a deliberate act from her murderer meant to degrade, humiliate, and manipulate the crime scene. It was not sexual, it was symbolic, a final attempt to reduce her, rewrite the narrative, and to stain Gloria's dignity in death. Her soul lingered briefly, with consciousness and purpose. This was not out of fear or being bound, but to observe, plant seeds of awareness, and gently nudge those investigating and grieving her. She stayed just long enough to leave energetic imprints so that the truth could surface, even if delayed. Once her soul confirmed that she had been seen beyond the physical, that someone knew, intuitively or spiritually, that this was not just a random act, she transitioned fully, with a strong, clear awareness and understanding, not just of what happened physically, but of the karmic meaning behind it as well. Afterwards, the killer re-entered life casually and quietly. He may have even appeared devastated and mourned publicly, or offered help and consolation. This person actively hid the truth about his involvement and continued to manipulate public perception. There are forensic and energetic imprints in this case that points back to the killer through DNA evidence, digital clues, and/or behavioral patterns. Gloria Covington's death activated a karmic ripple meant to expose buried truths and the illusions we accept about safety, trust, and goodness. It demands accountability and restored dignity not only to herself, but to others like her. Gloria's passage calls us to look closer at the people we assume are harmless, the ones who smile while hiding their rage. It asks us to stop silencing victims out of discomfort and to name the darkness that thrives in quiet, polite spaces. Gloria represents every woman who said no and was punished for it, every soul who tried to leave and never made it out. If you or someone you know has any information regarding the murder of Gloria Covington, please call the Amarillo Police Department at 806-378-9468.